Hello and welcome back. Happy Thursday, everyone. Today we are doing a rundown of Dev Diary 100 on the 20-year or approaching the 20-year anniversary of Victoria 1. In this Dev Diary, we are going to be first watching a couple of the videos that they put out for this, and then we are going to be getting into the changelog. Now, the changelog is almost no visuals, and it's just like bullet points, and so this sort of thing, and we'll be reading through and discussing some of the changes. And so to that end, I would suggest just booting up the game and having me on in the background if you wanted to just like listen to this a la podcast type of thing. You might get more out of it like this. And so without further ado, let's get into the some of the things. So we have welcome to Victoria World of Motion Pictures. This is a new channel of them, Victoria 3 Official. There's only 1.4k subscribers, so you can like and subscribe, and we're gonna be off on their way. There's only 2 videos. This one is distinct from this is distinct from the Paradox channel. So let's get into it. I haven't watched this yet.
19th century,
Woo, blimps. Stay on track. Get it? Stay on track. Ha, 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 ha. Alright. The music's super loud in that video, but okay, fair enough. And next up, we'll be watching. Normally, I wouldn't show something with Ludi at Historian there, or something of his that he's doing, but this is on the official channel, so we'll pop it down a like and take a look.
War never changes, except it just did in Victoria 3. My name is Ludi, famous wallet connoisseur and Victoria 3 enjoyer, and I'm collaborating with Paradox Interactive to explain the new army mechanics in Victoria 3 patch 1.5 and Colossus of the South DLC. In this video,
So this is the biggest thing that, in case you haven't been watching any of the 1.5, the beta content, this is the biggest update.
We'll give an overview of the new army system in the current patch, how to expand, research, and upgrade your armies, as well as how to avoid negative modifiers and
By the way, that's a properly constructed sentence that is grammatically correct. How to stonks army.
Balancing all branches of your army. By pressing F5 or simply clicking on your military tab, you will have 2 main tabs, one for your army and another for the navy. A lot of things have changed since the early days of Vicky 3, and one of the main features for the armies is the ability to create individual armies, with each having up to 4 commanders and 3 different military unit groups. We also have some statistics for each army highlighted at the top of the army screen, and they represent the amount of
This is a UI update from the beta, which is quite nice looking. We have attack and
battalions in the army, as well as the command limit, the manpower currently fielded, the morale, the upkeep of the army, average offense and defense, as well as the organization and attrition sustained. Below the statistics, we have the commanders of your army, which determine the command limit. You get 30 command from rank 1 generals, with the rank 5 or field marshals giving 200 command limit. Take note, upgrading your generals will increase the
So this is actually something that's super overtuned right now, and I almost left feedback on it, but I didn't. But generals just give way too much political strength, I think.
Political strength of your interest groups, as well as it costs a little bit of bureaucracy. Each general will command their own units and can start separate battles in combat, and have 2 main orders that you can assign, either advance or defend front, with different generals fulfilling different orders. The unit groups are divided into your infantry group, the artillery, and the cavalry at the beginning of the campaign. As you progress, you will research new types of units, be it infantry, artillery, or you will even be able to replace them with light and heavy tanks towards the end of the campaign. You can also recruit regular units or conscripts when deciding what army composition to have. The difference between the two is that regular units will always be available at a moment's notice, ready for combat at all times, whilst conscripts will have to be mobilized, but they do not count towards the overall command limit as regular units do. Researching new units is quite easy. All you need to do is go to your military branch of the technology tree and go down the path that you want to unlock. Upgrading your units is done with a simple click next to the unit in question. Take note, it will demobilize the unit whilst they are upgrading, and different units require different equipment. You can click on your units to see their weekly upkeep, which is determined by their intake of various resources from basic grain to guns, ammunition, ammunition, and artillery. It is determined for each
Also their
headquarters
wages, no?
individually based on the amount of battalions that it has, as well as the unit types for each.
Also, local prices should have an effect, so you do want to be putting your, arms and ammunition, for example, where you have your military built up.
Of those battalions. You can also choose the production method for training individually for each headquarters, or you can go to your building screen, development, and then select the production method for all of your armies. The effect of the production method determines the rate of training for your units, with better production methods offering faster recruitment rates, which in turn comes at a higher cost as more officers will be required.
Notably, if you have an area with a lot of discrimination, you probably want to use no organized training. If the main sticking point for recruiting up is actually not having enough officers, you'll probably recruit up faster if you don't have the quals.
In order to recruit new units, click on the desired units recruit button and place the barracks required for that unit in the desired state. After the barracks is constructed, it will take time for the unit to be recruited, which is where the recruitment rate from earlier comes into play. The amount of artillery and cavalry units in your army should...
Oh, look off to the right on the armies. They have the morale and stuff. I didn't even notice that. That's neat.
Never exceed the amount of infantry, as an unbalanced army composition will result in penalties, lowering your organization. Organization is one of the most important stats for your armies, so make sure to have enough command limit and a healthy balance of regular units alongside your special units. Another important...
Quick aside, what I think will be meta is still having a defensive army that's all infantry and a pushing army, which is infantry and, unless they change the numbers, and a pushing army, which is going to be a mix of cavalry and cannons and as much infantry as you need in order to avoid the malice.
Important stat is morale.
And the pushing armies push and the defensive armies just defend.
Which determines how long your armies will be in the fight. When the morale reaches a critically low point, the general will decide to retreat from the battle, as such resulting in a loss. Before you depart, remember to subscribe to the channel, as next we will have an in-depth tutorial about navies, as well as how wars work and how you can win them with your combined army-navy strength.
Okay, so that'll be fun once we get into it, once they have that out. But I just wanted to show that off really quick. There is a new channel. It's a completely new, Victoria 3 official, and there's like not a whole lot, there's just 2 videos right now. So, anyways, feel free to go check them out. So let's get, without further ado, let's get into the changelog. Now this is full on, this is a list. And so you might want to just boot up the game and just, bounce around the game, because we're not going to be, there's not going to be much visual aids. So here we go. The biggest free update Victoria 3 has ever received. To my knowledge, this is like the biggest free update, like any Paradox game that I could recall that we've seen. There will also be Colossus of the South for anyone who has the free to anyone who has the Grand Edition. This was not included in the mention of, when you bought the Grand Edition, this was not something that was included that they said you'd be getting, but they're still giving it away for free. I think this is because a lot of people were dissatisfied with the voice of the people, and so this is an indication of, I think further good faith regarding Paradox and their DLC policy, because they're fulfilling something they obviously don't have to, as a sort of, and I think it's unnecessary, but I think it's quite nice. So, let's continue on. Victoria, An Empire in the Sun was released on November 14th, 2003, which is why update, 1.5 is going to be released on November 14, and this is the 20-year anniversary. We can see here, this is like the one infographic we have, update 1.5. Let's kind of zoom in. We have, unit formations, military graphics, Diplo state trading. This mechanic wasn't working very well in the beta. A lot of stuff that was not working very well in the beta is probably tuned, but just something to note. Local prices, absolutely tremendously. This is why we're going to be redoing a ton of economic tutorials, because local prices really changes everything and makes everything a lot more nuanced and interesting. But if essentially you can get vertical integration in states, impose law on subjects, new mechanic, which is interesting, but haven't really played around with it too much. But in theory, changing someone's migration, system, slowly microing someone to have a different migration system. For example, if you're the UK and the EICs in your market, they start out with migration controls. The Indian pops can't migrate. they're going back to this type of migration on release. And so what you can do is you can just slowly try and change them onto, open borders by, fiddling with their government a whole lot and then fighting the revolutions that your fiddling causes in order to get them into the industrialists. So there's perhaps like a little bit of a mini game. I think it'll mainly be present on the UK. There's companies, currently companies are kind of, I think, in an early form where they give bonuses. They don't really inform, like, for the most part, I think that what's meta is everyone just use the companies, the same type of companies, and you never try and specialize in like clothing or furniture. It's all resources still, and you just use the resource companies, the best ones available to you, and it's going to be changed from country to country. But I do think they add some bonuses. They add some construction speed. Construction across the board in 1.5 was nerfed, and so getting back some of this on the construction. We'll see if they changed the things so that you can slot it in immediately. We'll see. Multiple battles across front lines. Now wars do not feel very stally, at least on the beta, and I'm assuming it's going to be the same on update 1.5. Travel system for formations. Units actually have a place on the map and they travel along the path, and this sort of thing. If they're like traveling through friendly territory with railroads, they travel really fast, and so this is system. New formable nations, Confederation of the Rhine, HRE, and there's another one like Benelux. They're like kind of all in the same area. We'll get to those. And colonial administrations, which right now don't seem to offer too much incentive for actually utilizing, but I imagine in patch 1.6 when they introduce foreign investment, they make a lot more sense. So let's close this up and continue on our way. First, let's cover the features you could expect in Colossus of the South, which is a kind of flavor pack. I actually don't know what to call it. They call it a DLC. Fair enough. There's 19 new journal entries, including, this is all for South America. Reign of Pedro, historical stuff for Brazil. The Old Republic, the power of the Brazilian landowners, and the emergence of the positivist revolution against the monarchy. Cool. Populism, challenges to the agrarian oligarchy in Brazilian from anti-government bandits and the populist and integralist movement. National awareness, development of a unique, diverse Brazilian culture, as well as expansion goods in Paraguay, South America, unification, Gran Colombia, and pan-nationalism movements of the Federation of the Andes and Rio de la Plata. Currently, the biggest country you could kind of form, and it's formed through its major unification, so you can do it diplomatically, is formed from Argentina, and it's basically every Spanish-speaking country in South America. If you form it with someone else, which you can, you don't get all of Argentina. Okay. Amazonian riches. This is one I'm really excited for, which is it's changing the state bonuses. This is present in the previous Dev Diary where they talk about it, but you can change the state bonus of the Amazons to not have anywhere near as much construction inefficiency, which is going to make South America a really nice place to play. And the dynamic state bonuses, we will see, but that's something that's tremendously interesting to me, and if state bonuses can change a lot, then it'll be interesting. Over 100 new events, POG. Over 200 new historical characters, POG. And then 11 new South American companies, new gaucho outfits, new Brazilian interest groups, 5 new achievements, new event illustrations, etc., etc., etc. New loading screen, our favorite. We see lots of those. Okay, additional content available to everyone. It reworked journal entries, 48 new events, 38 new historical characters, new map, new formable nation, Rio de la Plata, new ideology, despotic utopian, which is available for Paraguay, and new cultures, etc. Now, we hate the new cultures, to be honest, not because we're intolerant of others, but because every time there's more pop splintering, it kind of hurts performance. And so, in general, I wish they merged cultures instead of adding new cultures, but here we are. Although I think that some of these dynamically change and update, so they mentioned some mechanic in Dev Diary 99 where if you have a nationalist sentiment, you'll trend towards the nationalist version, otherwise you have the native you don't integrate the natives, something like this, but I forget, and so that's for Dev Diary last time. Okay, that's for last Thursday, except last Thursday was Wednesday, never forget. Okay, major feature updates in 1.5. Military formations. This is perhaps the biggest one. Armies and fleets can now be created and disbanded. Oh, thank God. beta, you can disband them. You assign both commanders and units of specific types to alt-time them. All military configurations, control, unit hiring, upgrading, disbanding, including conscription in battalions, is now done through military formations rather than through buildings like the barracks and individual commanders. This is how it was done previously. Disbanding units recognizes keyboard modifiers, shift and control. Thank God that wasn't present in the beta. Note on the tooltip is not updated to reflect this yet. Military formations have an organization score, which impacts recovery rate, offense, defense, and morale gain, and a supply score, which impacts morale recovery. Notably, as we saw in the Ludi video here, they did mention that it does have to do with the ratio in terms of organization. And so you cannot have all artillery armies, which was what was meta in the beta. Oop, keep clicking, can't do that. Also, we added icons and colors for customization of military's formation's visual identity. It's spectacular. So now it will be easier to, at a glance, customize things. I hope that they make templates, but I don't think they will, where you can just say, add this template, recruit from these provinces, and off you go. Okay. Mobilization option, also available on armies. Formations lets you configure how much extra goods you want your armies to consume when mobilized, and benefits provided to all units at a formation cost of goods. So there's a ton of these that just give morales, especially the ones where you give drugs, usar drogas, and if you're playing on the new DLC, and except I don't know how to say it in Portuguese. But a lot of these just give increased morale recovery, which actually makes military wages, relatively speaking, a lot worse than it used to be. So it used to be just go level 5 military wages on pretty much everyone anytime you're at war, or anytime it was a real war, but you just leave it on because you're lazy. That's what I did, at least. But now with so many things giving more morale recovery that you can do on military equipment, it makes a little bit more sense. Also notably, the army, not professional army, but instead the landowner-based one, I forget what it's called right now, but it gives minus military equipment cost. In theory, if there's a lot of mobilization options or enough mobilization options to really drive up the price, it might be worth using this. I think it's peasant levies, actually. Okay. Travel network. Created a travel network based on hubs and state hubs and ocean nodes. Added functionality for 3D models to move over travel networks and formations, added graphical errors, etc., etc. Guys travel along actual paths now. Frontline and battle graphics. This is not something that necessarily I'm too focused on, but you can now zoom in and you can see the little horsies and the little guys with the guns, and they go pew 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 pew, and the cannons go boop 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 boop, and it's nice. Units will wear uniforms indicating which country they belong to, and will be wielding weapons and accessories, artillery horses. For any of you who've ever wielded a horse, please let me know how that goes. Suitable to their type. Mobilization options such as air surveillance can also have a strong visual impact. When are we going to get blimp forces? Okay. Multiple simultaneous battles. This one's really big. You can now have multiple battles. This encourages you to recruit a lot of generals. And as we mentioned, during this video, there's the fact that the metagame now encourages you to recruit a ton of generals because you can have more battles going on simultaneously, and you want at least one general per battle. Now, General Clout seems to have a way bigger impact, if you're just kind of playing normally and recruiting up a ton of generals instead of trying to game the mechanic. So, okay. Shared fronts and state-based battles. There will be a bunch of battles per state. Let's just read this. Fronts adjacent to 2 or more allies in the same war will now be contiguous, preventing proliferation of fronts that could result in unmanageable gameplay. You're telling me. Furthermore, the fronts now only move when a sufficient number of battles have been won to completely occupy a state, making front movement a lot more predictable. So you'll just progressively occupy a state, and then once you fully occupy it, then the front actually moves, so now there's not as much front splintering. If you haven't been playing on the 1.5 beta, this is noticeable on the beta. Okay, companies, which is going to be kind of a huge feature, and now it's only this little kind of update, but let's get into it. Each country now has a number of company slots, which will increase from technology and laws. A company has a number of associated building types and improves throughput and construction speed. This is the biggest thing. This is why you want your industries, your companies on the very best industries to build normally, which are resources, generally speaking. And so everyone just kind of uses the mining resources. And then generic steel, at least in the beta, was really strong, I felt. And so I was always using that. And so it was generic, ores, minerals, and generic steel. Okay. increases the throughput and construction speed. Now, since it's increasing throughput and construction speed, also important to emphasize, you are going to want companies that you have a ton of buildings on, because if let's say 20% of your construction goes towards building iron mines, it's less than 20%, but bear with me. This means that you will be getting the benefit of the throughput on 20% of your construction, and also construction speed. If you think of it relative to something like small arms, which there's only generally like, it's like a fraction of a percent, or like 1% of your total construction goes towards building small arms, it makes no sense to have throughput and construction speed on these buildings. You'd rather just build one extra building, barely spend any construction, and not worry about the throughput. And so the things that are a higher proportion of your economy are going to be the things that you want to have companies for. And so I think that this create a very unbalanced metagame, generally speaking, but let's continue on. If a company's buildings have high productivity relative to the global average, shout out to labor-saving PMs being good even when they're not good, the company will gain prosperity over time and unlock a special bonus modifier. There are a number of basic companies that are available to all countries. In particular, generic steel and generic gold look particularly good, while, you know, the generic mineral resources are going to be worth using over like a unique shirt company, because, you know, who needs shirts when you can wear iron, which can construct their associated building types in about 100 special flavored, mostly historical companies, which are generally upgraded variants of the basic companies, lies, and may be available due to factors such as cultures or states you own. A small number of countries start with a predefined historic company at game start. Okay, spectacular. Local prices. This is like four lines, but this is the biggest thing in terms of affecting gameplay, because your primary access or lever through which you interact with the game is how you construct buildings, and this dramatically affects how you construct buildings. The degree to which the market can influence price goods is now capped by the market access price impact modifier. Now, they of course are not calling it by its true name, MAPI, market access price impact. And so what this does is it makes it so that you will, no matter what, be effectively denied access to the market, and some of it will be informed by local prices. You want the MAPI as high as possible. That way you have the biggest impact by market rather than local prices. But what local prices will do is they will always pull the price of goods in a direction that you would not prefer, with like a slight asterisk to extreme edge cases. And this means that you will want to build all of your economy with, you will want it to be vertically integrated. And so you will want to have all your buy orders for the goods, or as many buy orders as possible, in the same place you have sell orders. In particular, this means that you want to build construction sectors in places that have iron and coal, and to a lesser extent also lead and wood and sulfur. And that because the construction sectors, iron frame buildings require iron, obviously, and so if you have your sell orders and buy orders in the same state, this means your iron will get to sell at a better price, and your construction sectors will also get to buy at a cheaper price. Let's not belabor this too much, but just say that it makes a huge impact in terms of how you play, because now you care where you build stuff. Now it's really important, and you can't just build wherever or stack stuff high in one spot. Let's continue reading. This means that local production and consumption will now always matter when determining the price of good in a state. The max MAPI you can get is 95%, creating an opportunity for local synergies and supply chains. Unincorporated states have -10 state market access impact. Okay. 95 is the most you can get. Reverse sways. It is now possible for a participant in a diplomatic play to offer support in either exchange for desired sways. Super unbalanced in the beta. I'm assuming they've toned it down a little bit, but UK transferring EIC is a bit of a thing sometimes. Trade states. Implemented trade states diplomatic action that allows a country to either give away a state, request a state from another country, or offer to trade one state for another state. I'm guessing that you won't use this too often, but it does allow you to clean up borders in Africa. Alert settings. You can now customize which alerts should appear inside, outside of important actions ball. Added message tabs for etc. You can make stuff better. Okay. Pollution. And pollution is now introduced in the game. Now as a mechanical effects and fully exposed in state and building panels. High pollution can now give you a malice to gives a malice to mortality, standard of living, and migration attraction. The malice can be counteracted by health insurance institution. Added additional map mode for pollution. Just want to note, the healthcare institution is now absolutely insane, very strong, and so, it also gives SOL, which is going to greatly pull migration. Okay, especially with SOL just generally kind of being nerfed. It's giving it on top of that, although we'll see what live looks like relative to the beta. Unit experience, added experience for veterancy level, you gain it, etc. Cool. Commander orders, you can now always adjust commander orders to whatever you like at any time. Thank God. You used to have to wait for a battle to finish before switching from offense to defense. It used to be super tedious. If they cannot switch to it immediately because they're in battle, they will do so at the earliest opportunity. You cannot move to a front or change fronts while you're involved in a battle, but this is maybe not the biggest deal. Orders have been streamlined to now indicate how commanders should behave now, which is detached from any sort of target location. Several new orders have been added as well, most of them unlocked by having specific commander traits and military formation composition. The default general order has been changed to advance in order to make armies at a front active instead of passive by default. Okay. Naval Invasion Planner panel. New interfaces and mechanics for improved control and insight into your naval invasions. This is something that we're still working on relative to the beta, so I'm imagining it's a little flushed out now. The standby and naval invasion commander orders have been removed. You can now start naval invasions via the military land's own formations. Okay, spectacular. They said something about being able to commit multiple armies to a naval invasion. I don't see anything here, but we'll see. Implemented a feature where each time an admiral loses a battle, Sag, he is marked as defeated, Ultra Sag. When humiliated in such fashion. When a fleet is composed of only defeated admirals, it's forced to return home to its HQ. Once reaching all HQ, defeated flags are cleared. Fleets now have a presence in a C node, which affects the effectiveness. Whoever wrote this copy of this sentence, please, affects the effectiveness, please, of admiral orders in the C node. Presence is reset whenever fleet moves, so if a fleet's been in a place a longer time, they're a little bit better. This is not something they've explained in too great a depth. I'm assuming we'll get a little bit of that in our tutorial video next week, or whenever they do it. I don't think they said it was going to be next week. This is going to be a mechanic that was not in the beta, and it's going to be nice. Naval orders in a C node are now visualized on an emblem surrounding the node. Okay. By the way, the presence is supposed to create. I read a dev comment where they're supposed to create a cat and mouse game where you're kind of trying to chase, someone who's establishing a presence somewhere, and hopefully, the naval battles get a little bit more immersive or interesting. Okay, fleets and ongoing wars are now listed in the C regions panel. Yar. Spectacular. Animations for both army and fleet dioramas have been added to indicate defeat victory. Added impose law on subject feature with interface for overlords to force their subject to change laws, which is what they mentioned. You can only change it to one. You can only force them to change to something that their interest groups in their government would allow them to change to anyways, though. So again, you're probably going to play a little bit of a mini game as the UK changing the EIC to having open borders. The start diplomatic play interaction has been changed to make diplomatic demand. This is because sometimes they can just back down. This allows one country to demand a single war goal from another, which if rejected starts a diplomatic play for that war goal. It is possible to bypass the demand phase and start the diplomatic play right away, which is useful if you want multiple demands and you're concerned that they will back down. Services, electricity, and transportation are now local goods, and whose prices are fully set based on local production and consumption, and market price plays no role at all. In the beta, this leads to really tedious gameplay. We'll see if they've done anything to kind of make that better. And also, electricity just goes crazy, but there should be another update somewhere else where they say stuff will not expand via the private queue unless it's over 95%. Over 95%, occupation on the building, so you won't see the electricity just, it'll be at 10% employment and there's plus 30 from the private queue. We ought not to see that, but you have to turn on and off PMs, locally for each state as a result of how much electricity and transportation you have. And it is a little bit tedious if they've not done anything to improve it. They've done a couple things to improve it, but okay. This is hopefully they've made it so you can't turn on electricity PMs if you don't have electricity. They haven't done the same for transportation. They should do the same for transportation. I wish there was a way to do it so that you could, only swap on everything that would not cause a shortage. But as it stands right now, this is the way we're going. Notably, in terms of as a simulation, electricity absolutely should be confined to one state. In transportation, transportation's a weird abstraction of various things. So saying that it should be something is weird. But electricity, you can't really transport it, so it definitely makes sense. You especially can't transport it from New York to Alaska. So yeah. Or Alaska, Australia is even a bigger one. So this is a good change, but it does add quite a bit of tedium, unless they've improved it from the beta, where we're at right now. Added a new frontier colonization law. This will only allow you to colonize contiguous land. This is what the U.S. starts with, and will prevent the U.S. from colonizing Africa. Kind of a minor thing. Units can be upgraded over time to the currently selected default unit type of their group. Infantry, artillery, and cavalry by pressing a button. We saw that in the Ludi video. Barracks and construction sector PMs that deal with unit types have been removed for the most part. A new training category has been added instead. Spectacular. Added a commander right-click option to quickly split a single commander into their own formation. Thank God. Bringing a fraction of composition of the units commensurate with the command limit when compared to the overall command limit of the formation as a whole. Spectacular. Added a bi-directional... Oh my god, my eyes. Added a bi-directional transfer pop-up to exchange units between commanders and between military formations. Cool. I don't think this is present in the beta right now. Armies can now be demobilized during wars, leading them to return to the closest HQ and gradually reducing their mobilization consumption over 3 months. Unfortunately, if you demobilize an army and then start they instantly get demobilized when you finish a war. They get demobilized over 3 months when you don't. And so what happens is if you demobilize when a diplomatic play, if you demobilize for some reason and then the war ends, it will then take you another 3 months to remobilize, which is kind of annoying. But okay, this is whatever. Pursuit, panic, retreat, and controlled battle battle conditions have been added to ensure very lopsided battles end quickly. This is spectacular. Really, if you have an overwhelming advantage, fronts push really fast. This combined with multiple battles, it feels a lot better. Added tutorial lessons for establishing a company and creating a formation. Spectacular. Replace Chile with New Granada as recommended country for learning the game objective. Okay, still haven't done that one yet. Can't stop, won't stop. List of a whole ton of countries. Now start with historical formations. I don't know what start with historical formations means. So do they start with particular names for their formations, or do they actually have a bonus? I imagine they start with historical names on their armies, and that this is the flavor rather than them having some unique bonus. But okay, we will see. Added in new formable countries, the HRE / United States of Europe, the United Netherlands, Rio de la Plata, which is Greater Argentina basically, the Confederation of the Rhine, Maghreb, Pakistan, and Turtle Island. Added a new POP property called Job Satisfaction. POPs will now evaluate their satisfaction with their current job and factor this into their employment decisions. As of the beta, this seems to make qualifications a little bit more important because they will be a little bit sticky, coming on up to new jobs. But okay, qualifications should be more of a factor. Now, they should be more of a factor anyways, and so anything that makes them more of a factor is fine with me. Reworked revolutions to properly support commanders, units and formations to defect the revolutionary side. To properly support commanders, units, and formations to defect to the revolutionary side. I guess this wasn't working in the beta, maybe? Okay. There are now explicit demands. Maybe this makes it so they defect proportional to their command amount relative to their ideology, in which case recruiting the right ideology general becomes more important. We'll see, I guess. There are now explicit demands placed war goals for increasing the autonomy or reducing the autonomy of the subject. This completely changes the metagame in regards to expansion, but the autonomy scale now goes from protectorate to dominion to puppet And then from tributary to vassal, while a personal union can be turned into a puppet vassal protectorate tributary if autonomy is increased or decreased. And so what it will be now is it now takes like 20 years instead of 6 or 7 years, it now takes like 22 years to fully integrate something. You used to be able to dominion, and then 5 years later start a war to annex, and so it would take like roughly 6 or 7 years. And now you have to now you have to protectorate, wait 5 years, then you have to dominion, wait 5 years, then you have to vassal, wait 5 years, and then annex. And all in all, this will take like 25 years. And so this makes just taking states a lot better if you particularly want it on an immediate basis, and it makes the slow moving kind of thing a little bit worse. The one exception to this is now people will reverse sway to you to become a protectorate, in which case it takes like 15 years, which is not so bad, but it definitely slows down expansion, especially on the bigger targets where you're not just taking individual states. Okay. Added new vineyards building and wine growing potentials for states, particularly Europe and the Middle East. Removed wine production from farms. Cool. Added a new explosives building. The explosives building is actually quite strong. You build it where you have mines, but especially where you have sulfur. And I think the other input is it iron? Yeah, I know it has 2 inputs, but it also has the input of fertilizer, which is further built from sulfur, so it's really good where you have sulfur. Split arms industries into 2 buildings. Artillery foundry now produces artillery exclusively. If they haven't updated it, the second artillery PM might actually be the best one rather than the later ones, but because it consumes more hardwood, and generally right now there's a super glut of hardwood, so the fact that it produces... Anyways, the fact that it consumes more hardwood is preferable. Radical pops are now drawn to opposition groups, and loyalist pops are drawn to government interest groups. This actually seems to affect things quite a bit, in that it will be really hard to get, positive approval from loyalists for guys who are not in the government. Added a foster national agitation character annexure for friendly agitators, allowing them to stir up turmoil in cultural homelands owned by foreign powers. So I think that this helps facilitate Italy and Krakow and stuff like this. Production methods now specify that they require access to particular goods to be able to be activated. This is what we mentioned with electricity. Maybe they've added it to transportation as well. Adjacent states without potential travel connections will now get auto-generated underdeveloping crossing connections. Adjacent states without potential travel connections now get auto-generated underdeveloped crossing connections. I'm not sure exactly what this means, but okay. All right. So that is features. Now, let's get to improvements. Added a native Apple Silicon CPU support. This doesn't... Okay. Army and Navy formations now get generated name based on numerals and country adjective. Moreover, the player can now rename each individual formation. Spectacular. It is now possible to rename companies. That's going to be... In multiplayer, we're going to see some no-no words. Added the call ally sway, which could be used to sway an ally. In your diplomatic side, this sway offers no additional acceptance score, but doesn't promise anything to an ally. Okay, added the become subject sway, which allows you to become a subject of a country and consequently offer a country to become your subject. This is how we were mentioning you expanded like 17 years. In addition to in exchange for diplomatic play support, added a transfer subject sway, which allows you to transfer subjects, etc. Added transfer state sway, which allows you to transfer a state. Added the diplomatic pact sway, which allows you to sway for something such as trade agreements, customs union, and bankrolling. Bankrolling is spectacular. They need to nerf the acceptance rate, because a lot of countries will accept this when they can't afford it, and they'll just automatically bankrupt themselves. Play a support with a forced duration of 5 years if accepted. Bankrolls pacts resulting from this do not generate any obligations while their forced duration is in effect. This is new from the what is it called, the beta. Okay. Adding a war goal against a neutral enemy subject to a play now forces the targeted subject to become a part of the enemy plane so that their war goal can be properly contested. This is really nice. This means that you don't necessarily have to land in the home counties if you add the war goal of, like, transfer Cape Colony, for example. Now you can just land Cape Colony because they become part of the play. Added a slew of resources to Persian states, including tobacco, dyes, iron, coal, wine, silk, and cotton. Wow, they don't mention the most important thing they added, which was wood. There's now a ton of would. So, big nice. Oh, no, wait. They say big thanks to Samite. They didn't say big nice. Big nice to Samite for all these wonderful data and ideas. This makes Persia way more playable. There's a ton of resources now. We did a little bit of a Persia run with these new resources, but they are here. Added additional homelands to Iranian states to account for the country's Arab, Kurdish, and Turkmen communities. Cool. Added 28 new state traits to the game and reworked some existing ones. In particular, South America is a lot more playable without so many construction malices. And they reworked a lot of construction malices in general. It used to be the case that anything that had a mining bonus basically gave a construction malice, and they got rid of that. So, what is it? In Sardinia, Piedmont, I think it's Piedmont, now doesn't have a construction malice. Perm doesn't have a construction malice. A lot of states with mining bonuses got a lot better, like Pennsylvania, which is really relevant with local, with having local prices and wanting vertical integration, because now you want to build really high in places like Pennsylvania and Perm and stuff like this. Okay. Added progress bars for attack and defense to front panel and C-nose panel. Cool. Added interest groups will now only launch petitions for laws that are potentially able to be supported by a political movement. It is now possible to start liberate country diplomatic plays, with the country being liberated picked from a selection in the confirmation pop-up. So now being able to launch a play that costs 0 infamy that just kneecaps someone is super spectacular. It's not really functioning very well in the beta. I assume it's largely improved in live. Oh my god, I need to drink some water. I assume it's largely improved in live, or what will be the live release, where you can select whichever state you want. In the beta right now, in the current juncture of the beta, you can only release like one option, and I'm assuming it's gonna like give you all the options of states you can release. It's now only possible to demand the annexation of a puppet or a vassal. As mentioned earlier, this makes expanding through the vassalization chain much more, it takes like 20 years or 25 years-ish, and then on top of this, it's like more infamy overall. It used to be, I forget the exact percentages, it used to be like 65% infamy relative to just straight up annexation. Now it's 85% infamy, but like if you have a lot of migration attraction and they have open borders, you can pull migrants and lower their population, which determines how much infamy stuff costs. So it might be a little bit less, or you might flood them with migrants from your market, in which case it will increase the infamy cost. And so, okay. Buildings will no longer raise their wages to try and hire additional employees unless they can maintain a decent profitability after the account for the increased employment. This improves performance. Buildings will no longer snipe employees from other buildings. This is basically the same thing, improves performance. Buildings will no longer hire employees if doing so would result in them being unprofitable, and this is basically the same thing. War goals are now only considered to be contested when the state is fully occupied. Partial occupation does not count. Interesting. This is new from the beta, but certainly makes some sense. It makes it harder. It makes it so you can't just, tick one at a time, just happening to win a naval landing, which in theory would make multi-landings effective, but multi-landings categorically seem to be very much relative to 1.4, where it was just getting it for free. Now it's not like that anymore. Navy is really important, relatively speaking. Okay. Added a new state penalty to a birth rate proportional to the unemployment rate in the state. This is spectacular. Prevents overpopulation in the late game and improves performance. Added a new pop penalty to a birth rate proportional to the literacy of the pop. Updated the music system so that all tracks have a relaxed mode, POG. Redistributed resource potentials for coal, iron, and lead in Brazil. And moved Cerro dos Carreiras modifier to para. The suzerain of the potential of the primary participants in the diplomatic play can now take sides before the closing phase. Previously, they could not join the diplomatic play after the initial phase. Thank God, this is so nice. Because sometimes something happens in the play that makes you won't change your mind in regards to what's happened. Like, often if you're a subject, and like you're like, oh, I win this war, I don't need UK's help or whatever, and then like someone joins against you, France joins in against you, now you can't sway in the UK. It's like stupid. Okay, but so spectacular. Battles were detached from the frontline border now happen in other provinces within the state. Added historical naval setups for all major and minor naval powers. I assume this is going to be their formations having names. Added historical army setup for these countries. I assume this is just historical names. Subjects are now blocked from backing a side of a diplomatic play if their overlord is backing the other side. When backing a side in diplomatic play as an overlord, any subjects of yours on the other side will now be forced to become neutral, taking a relations hit in the process. So this means perhaps that you can't nuke a customs union anymore by doing this. And similarly, a customs union cannot be nuked. Okay, added a severe state malaria icon, modified the state malaria icon. Now they look different. It's much more visually accessible, I suppose. Change military map modes to match the colors for military-related map markers. Remove field promotions as they are no longer relevant in the context of military formations. It's now possible to decline a sway offer that is calling in an obligation, although doing so will repudiate the obligation with all associated penalties. In addition, I think it makes it so that people don't value your obligations as much, if I recall correctly. Allies are no longer able to automatically added as backers in diplomatic plays but have to be swayed in. Illegitimate governments may now only enact laws that have supported political movements, which is nice because now you can pass laws that have supported political movements rather than being blocked for the enactment altogether. Countries now have a certain amount of free trade routes before they have routes starting to cost bureaucracy to maintain. Trade routes that are always free due to trade agreements do not count towards this cap. Wow, that's new, that's interesting, that's good, definitely. Diplomatic play, demand war goal, make puppet was changed to protectorate, make vassal was changed to make tributary, make dominion was removed. This is slowing down player expansion. Power projection is now calculated based on the total average offensive, defensive, naval, army, and naval units multiplied by manpower and provides a largely accurate measure of the country's formation total combat power. Modifiers that used to increase power projection are now instead increased to prestige from army and navy power projection. Cool. This makes sense, and now you can't look spookier or look weaker based on, things. I think that this will tend to overrate, though, countries with really big armies. So Qing will have a much bigger power projection than is appropriate because they have a ton of units, and it is better to have a, 1,000... 100 combat units than it is to have 10,000, 10 combat units, right? In terms of how stuff works out, because you can't bring the full force to bear, generally speaking, because you're limited by infrastructure in terms of combat width, and so it's not perfect, but okay, whatever. Number of maximum commanders per country is now removed in favor of a limitation to max 4 per formation. This unfortunately allows you to recruit unlimited commanders, which can allow you to kind of abuse clout, but it's really tedious to do, so shout out to you if you want to do that. I mean, if you want to accomplish particular tasks and you want to absolute min-max stuff, you will abuse this. But it's also super tedious. Command limit is now aggregated in the formation panel with a soft penalty. Organization limit for exceeding it. Government administration, power plants, and universities and skyscrapers are now development buildings. Spectacular. So they will all be in the same spot instead of being in the, this is just a UI cleanup thing, right? Replaced anachronistic 1955 hammer and circle design with a more period-appropriate design in the mass majority of cases. Oh no, we're not just going to have hammer and sickle on everyone. Voice of the people reworked Paris Commune to create a more interactive and competitive experience with the AI. Health insurance laws now have a few more varied effects, e.g. higher standard limit for different strata, increased petite bourgeoisie political strength. I think this is reworked even a little from the beta, but currently health insurance is just absolutely insane relative to the way it used to be. It used to be just kind of whatever, I'll just get more migration. Now it seems particularly important, especially with nerfs to population growth and stuff. Added functionality for formations that cannot find a path to always try and station at the nearest HQ or C node. This, I think, probably prevents you from being exiled to the Shadow Realm. Improved map, which is something that happened in the beta. Improved map interaction for adding conscripts. Adjusted army laws to the new system. Peasant levies will now Peasant levies will now have a limited set of units which they are allowed to recruit it under them. So this was not kind of the case Oh man, this is unfortunate. So we should have done our military-industrial complex on the beta then, but our Qing run that we were planning on doing. But peasant levies will have a limited number of units which will be allowed to recruit under them. I'm assuming that, for example, you cannot have squad infantry under peasant levies. Peasant levies notably giving minus military equipment cost, which is a free money modifier, which is probably it's something that would have been interesting to stack and abuse, but apparently they said no. Okay, voice of the people. The Paris Commune now inherits journal entries and variables. France ends up winning. Cool. German-Italian unification candidate now inherit the incorporation status of any countries they annex as part of the unification event chains, but not as the war goals. Spectacular. Remove diplomatic actions to become demand subject. Ask for independence. They are now done through diplomatic demands instead. AI, which means you can ask and then they say no, and then it launches a diplomatic play. AI now takes more factors into account when deciding how many construction sectors to aim for. Awesome, because AI is really bad at building construction. Constructors with large investment pools in particular will now focus on expanding more construction and potential. Shout out to We Play Games for this is a large complaint that he made, and this is getting fixed. Regime change now changes all laws and government's principles to match the war holders' laws. Regime change now changes all laws and governance principles to match the war goal holders' law, assuming the two laws differ too much ideologically, and the law change is not blocked by technology or other laws that are not being changed. Interesting. Which this I forget exactly what governance principle refers to. If it refers to just the one section or the entire left side branch. But again, you maybe want to fiddle with trying to change people so that you can pull in their migrants, in particular the EIC. They're the only one I can think of that's particularly important. Engineer and master bureaucrat traits now have different effects for agitators. Women's suffrage now available under anarchy. Women's suffrage, okay, yeah, sure, fair enough. Normally you needed to have a voting system in order to get women's suffrage, and then, so you would always have to have a voting system, even if you wanted to switch off of something, if you wanted women's suffrage. So this led to weird play patterns where you would go wealth voting, go for women's suffrage, and then go for technocracy, something like this. Which it seems like now you can still do it, but now now it's available under anarchy. One vote, or one woman, 2 votes, catch these hands. Okay. The anarchy way. A new building's wage is now initiated to whatever the average age needed to sustain wealth levels in the state. Perfect. So this will help to prevent weird stuff. Buildings now evaluate wages more frequently when they're unprofitable. It is now possible to select already mobilized armies for naval invasions. This is something that was in the 1.5 early beta that was broken. If a military formation has more combined specialty units, i.e. artillery, cavalry, than its default units, e.g. infantry, organization limit is now penalized. So we were talking about having a defensive army and an offensive army. I imagine what the case will be is you will want a defensive army, which is all infantry, and then an offensive army, which is ostensibly 34% infantry, and then then 33 and a half artillery and cavalry, something like this. Or more combined special units. Just kidding, it'll be half infantry and half RD, half RD, and then half cavalry if you're on a landing squad. Okay. Failed naval invasions. Now clear all occupation by the country unless an active front against that country unless there is an active front against the invaded state in the full war. Cool. Mass migration. Oh, this will make this further nerfs multi-landings. Some multi-landings really aren't gonna cheesy work anymore. They seem to kind of work, but in the beta, but this will make it even worse. Mass migration targets now always receive some number of migrants with the rate determined by secondary factors. Cool. Decrease the amount of food from subsistence farms from 2.5 per level to 2. This should make corn laws much more doable. Maybe this is why it's so much easier to pop corn laws on a bunch of countries. But okay. Allowed Russia to initiate the Alaska Purchase, based. Give Japan the frontier colonization law on the start, which allows them to colonize adjacent, which allows them to colonize Hokkaido and Sakhalin, but will not allow them to colonize elsewhere. Changed the map color for on the fence and leaning countries in diplomatic plays from orange to blue. Okay. Update the military lens to show formations HQ markers at all zoom levels. Is this going to hurt my thumbnails? Oh no. Adopted notification for canceled paths towards the front's HQ's seed nodes for tracked formations. Underdeveloped traffical connections from harsh environments, mountains, deserts, jungles, etc. Received the harsh underdevelopment type, which is extra slow. I assume once you build a railroad, it goes faster. Added a military marker, smoothing for player formations while on Spline network. Spline, that's not a word I'm that familiar with. Added 4 new Persian state traits, the Alborz and Baluchi Mountains, the however it's pronounced forest, and the however it's pronounced oasis. Cool. I'm not sure if these were on the beta, so these might be new. Replaced a bunch of anarchistic Persian city and regional names with more appropriate ones. Yeah, there's so much like local rework stuff for Persia, which is spectacular. Increased Iranian and arable land count across the board, which is good for migration. So it's like now it's a little bit of a new world country in the old world, because this is the one place in the old world where you have more arable land than you have pops, and so it creates. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. I don't think Persia's like especially strong or anything now, but it's definitely a lot better than it was. Adjusted the various military-related tutorial lessons to the new systems. Note that a lot of steps do have custom buttons highlighting and other support that you might not usually expect yet. Liberate country now gives the releasing country claims on any unincorporated states that are lost. Cool, that makes sense. Base rate conversion and assimilation are now reduced by the ratio of the radicals in the pop. So a pop with 50% radicals only gets half conversion and assimilation. Interesting. I mean, assimilation is only a performance thing right now, because you can only assimilate pops you accept anyways. Yeah, which is silly. Okay, Navy power projection now directly contributes to a country's max declared interest instead of max declared interest coming from naval bases. Power projection. Okay, this makes a lot of sense. Why we were, in one of our runs we had 1,000 possible declarable, interest. Combat units, although they probably adjusted the numbers, 1,000's a lot. That's a lot. Combat units now always recover morale outside of combat, but at a slower rate if they're above formation supply. You can now toggle mobilization options on or off even when mobilized. Thank God, but it comes at a cost to organization as morale. Fair enough. You could now suffer. It would happen so many times. You would just forget to turn something on, and then you'd feel really stupid, and then you'd want to fix your stupidity, and you can't fix your stupidity. Truly, this is a moral victory more than a practical victory, because the malice is probably not worth suffering. You now suffer a temporary organization penalty when transferring units between armies with different mobilization options. Fair enough. Prevented creating an empty AI formations by creating units with it. Empty AI formations by creating units with it. Prevented creating. I think this just prevents the AI from creating a million empty armies, which lags the game. Kazan now has Sunni state religion. Nice. Transferred Ceylon from East India Company. Transferred the state of Ceylon from East India Company to Great Britain. Okay. Fertilizer from ranches is now produced as a byproduct of sheep ranch PM rather than meat producing PMs, and requires intensive agriculture for ranch fertilization to be possible. This is a change from 1.4, I think, and I think it's been on the beta the entire time. The amount of slaves imported each week now depends on some additional factors, such as arable land and the population of the exporting state. Cool. When the two formations merge, the resulting formation inherits custom naming. Okay. The resulting formation inherits any custom naming. Thank God. So it's not. I hope this is not just the case. So it used to be that whatever you're merging onto, whatever you're merging onto, it retains that person's name. But hopefully now, if you are merging a unique unit with the one doesn't have any custom naming, it will name it based on the custom one. Improved access to consumer goods no longer required to complete the tutorial. Rice farms now have double employment and production, but they do not have double construction cost. This has been left in. The rice farms are OP. They have double employment, they have double production, but they only occupy one arable land slot, and they only cost, I think it's 200 construction, the same as every other thing, and so it's 2 buildings for the price of 1. Abuse rice. Okay, government-run production methods for plantations now give government shares. Cool. Vacuum canning and alcohol meat packaging. and consumes meat and fish instead of just fish. The Trail of Tears now directly kills the affected native pups. No. Liberia is now an American protector from game start. Canadian colonies now transfer claims from one to the other when merged by decision. Give Daniel Webster the Republican ideology. Certain subjects such as the EIC, East India Company and East Indies now take their first part of their name from their overlord so that they develop... so that if they end up under a different overlord, you get German East Indies or French East India Company, etc. Notably, if you are playing as the East Indies and you get the East India Company, you get the East India Company, which is the EIC. Old MacDonald had a country. EIC. Remove the vineyard production method from wheat, farm, and maize. Added a railway connection between, etc. Added a dirt road connection between, etc. City of... I almost said Bosnia. City of Bona... I was too excited. Moved to be within French-owned territory. Added alternate colors for Spain, Communist Austria, and Austria-Hungary. Changed Communist Germany's country to dark red. Changed Judaism's color to light blue. Added custom localization and ideology to American rural folk. All right, so that is all of the improvements we are getting. Now we have AI, and I think this is the last section we're going to go into. Oh no, we're going to talk about balance as well, but then we're going to kind of skip art, and we're going to skip some of these because obviously this is a super long dev diary. We've already been going a hot minute, and I know even though you guys love, the sweet nothings of my voice, there's only so much I can take. In terms of, yeah. All right, let's continue. The AI is now more likely to offer support in diplomatic play if they're already leaning to the side. They're more likely to attempt to sway a country that's already leaning to the side. That's this one. They're more likely to sway countries that are committed participants on the opposite side and switching sides. This is cool. I don't think I've seen the AI do too much of that. Fixed an issue where the AI would activate anchorages over proper ports. Thank God. Fixed an issue where AI was calculating gold reserve and income surplus targets incorrectly for some types of spending. So hopefully they build more construction. AI should now be better at setting up trade routes that are important for the company to import or export. They should be better at importing key industrial goods like rubber, but they don't have those. You used to have to export stuff to them to get them to turn on PMs to seed it, and then they would be interested. AI countries with very high GDP, such as China, are now much less willing to join customs union. Spectacular. We don't have to see China and Russia's customs union every game. AI now sends fleets to different sea nodes if at war. China will be... We even get the double down. China will be no longer be willing to join a customs union while still a major or great power. Spectacular. It was obscene and just a very strange play pattern. The AI now places more value on holding obligations on diplomatically relevant countries, even if they're just wary towards them. Interesting. The AI will now be less likely to use restrictive exports on tariffs on goods if they have substantial unused potential in their country, and less likely to use restrictive import tariffs on goods they do not have a substantial... Okay, cool. AI great powers are now much more keen on launching and joining cut-down size plays against pariah countries. Cool. Although we didn't notice that in our run, but okay. AI is now less inclined to jump in diplomatic plays to gain new subjects unless they are domineering towards those potential subjects. AI is now less willing... Oh, this is so good, actually. The AI used to be just crazy joining against you all the time, even if they're your overlord. Really frustrating. AI is now less willing to give away its subjects for support and play. This was definitely something throughout 1.5. You could transfer EIC a lot, and now they're kind of reining that back in, I hope, with this one. AI is now is less inclined to gain sympathy for a side in diplomatic play just because they are facing overwhelming odds, unless those overwhelming odds also come with harsh demands. Cool. AI now takes infamy of the starting war goal more into account when determining to be sympathetic towards the target of the play. AI are now less inclined to back a country into diplomatic play because it's faced with country... is now less inclined to back a country into diplomatic play just because it's facing a country with relatively high infamy that isn't a pariah. Interesting. So now if you go over 25, maybe you get less siding against you. AI is now very reluctant to remove declared interests that are supporting growing colonies. Makes sense. AI does less concentration of industries in a few states if this doesn't make sense due to local pricing situation. They basically did not seem to consider that at all, so this is cool. And I assume this affects your auto construction as well. AI now properly checks whether the target/overlord's war goal of target is able to capitulate when considering whether a war goal can be achieved through capitulation. Okay. Russia will now be more aggressive towards Central Asian subjects. Yikes. Fixed an issue where AI strategies did not work correctly due to bad is adjacent check against state. Okay. AI is now generally less willing to trigger revolutions when enacting certain laws, unless they are doing so to avoid another revolution. Man, the truth hurts. The AI is now willing to enact laws of lower chance of success if those laws are have a revolutionary movement or the government petition behind them. Cool. Fixed inconsistent triggers in government petitions that were creating problems for the AI through in following through on them. AI now prioritizes universities more unless it's very close to its innovation cap. This is a really nice one. AI is now less keen to get involved in plays when they have a truce with either primary participant. This is nice. So it used to be the case that you would just have to fight someone over and over and over and over and over again because they keep joining against you. When you would declare an offensive war, they would keep joining. And if they are less keen on doing it, if you have a truce, this is really nice. Liberated country is now has the liberated country start with friendly AI, strategic desire towards the releaser, and an antagonistic one towards their former oppressor. Spectacular. Fixed a bug where the AI would start and then immediately cancel bankrolling. AIs with economic imperialism are more likely to take treaty ports instead of demanding open markets against an aggressive isolationist country. Economic imperialism AI now only care about opening up the market of countries with at least 5 million GDP. This is nice. AI Austria will now annex Krakow properly. That's not proper if you're Polish. And added 3 new AI strategies tailored for council republics. Council republics are more inclined to enact progressive laws and developed industrially. AI council republics may now dissolve their colonial institutions. Okay, on to balance. Okay, adjusted some commander traits to balance the addition of new orders. Made a higher tier of countries gain the new corporate charters technology at game start. Made high tier countries, which kind of just makes the gap between high tech and lower tech countries even bigger than it was before. Colonial exploitation now lowers manufacturing throughput in unincorporated states by 10%, but boosts the throughput of mining plantations and rubber and logging by 20%. I think this change is really cool and now makes it feel like it feels like you actually have a decision between which colonial kind of law you want for other reasons as well. Because the migration attraction, well, it depends on how they change migration, but if they allow migration to pull in pops that are currently in 1.5.5, the migration's not working like how it's going to work on the live. In the way that works is it allows discriminated migration. If you allow discriminated migration, suddenly the other colonial law looks a lot better relative to colonial exploitation. But this colonial exploitation, this manufacturing throughput is a significant enough malice that the auto queue will really not build much manufacturing in these states, which means you can actually feels like you're exploiting them and pulling out the resources and this type of thing. Unfortunately, they are affected by minus 10% mapping, so like a corporation's still going to be a lot better than it was before, but until you incorporate them, they will be like resource bases, this type of thing. Okay, diplomatic demands / plays that do not involve taking territory, such as changing autonomy and laws, now generally not blocked due to high relations. So notably, you can have really high relations and then go to protectorate someone. They will be more likely to back down with the high relations, and then you just maintain high relations kind of throughout. And they're also more likely to accept reducing their autonomy. Added machine steel tools production method to tooling workshops that can be unlocked with vulcanization technology. Yeah, buddy, this is not present in the beta, but this is really cool that tools now no longer unlocks their highest tier thing like so early. It's like insane. So this is really cool. Big nice. Agitators no longer interfere in the enactment of laws they have no stance for. Okay, cool. Rebalance starting situation for several countries to minimize the unprofitability of game building as game starts. Rebalance pop growth leading countries to more evenly spread between SOL 5 to 20. More evenly spread growth. Okay. minimize unbalanced. A lot of buildings were unprofitable because of the new mapping changes, and so maybe this is what they're talking about up there. Removed the equipment adjustment modifiers for switching training PMs, makes sense. Adjusted a couple of important countries starting building in relation to military goods production. This definitely makes sense. Reduced overall level of service production as well on urban centers. So now services are higher. They also don't get subbed in for other goods as much because of how substitute goods works, which is not how it should work, but it is how it works, which is it's based on the total number of sell orders, what your substitutions happen, not the price of the substitute goods, which is not what substitute good means in economics, but okay. Revised modifiers and state traits that affect agriculture throughout throughput while affecting ranching and plantations where appropriate. Manufacturing, government, and military buildings now have lowered throughput in unincorporated states. Manufacturing, government, and military buildings have lower throughput in unincorporated states. So now we have the opposite of the Space Marine situation. You used to be able to go colonial exploitation, build military, and it would be stronger, and now we have reverse Space Marines. But okay. Reduced technology costs for Era 3, 4, and 5 techs. What's the shtick here? Okay, fine, whatever. This might even be on the beta. Extensive revisions to Wallachia, Moldovan populations and buildings have been made. The new joint stock companies, investment banks, corporate governance tech now progressively reduces the amount of urbanization needed to spawn in urban centers. So instead of needing 100, then you only need 85, then you only need 90, 85, 70, whatever. I forget what the exact numbers are, but what this does is it creates kind of this combined with lowered services creates areas, or it creates places that kind of soak up a lot of unemployment in the late game, because you will need a lot more employment in order to put out the services. Services prices also just generally don't hit the minus 75 like they used to. And so, okay. Readjusted secondary production methods on chemical plants, furniture manufacturing, glassworks, and tile business so they would be more profitable to select. Readjusted secondary production methods on chemical plants. I'm trying to remember which one on chemical plants. Oh, the chemical plants. Okay, got it. The chem plants are the things that make dyes, not... Wait, chemical plants. Wasn't that what they used to call the fertilizer one? Okay, I'm lost on the chemical plants, but furniture manufacturing, glassworks, and textile mills, so they're more profitable to select. Except for this floods with these last ones, these last three. This floods the market with there's way too much, way too much luxury goods, and so you will end up actually having certain places that don't produce any of the luxury good except for furniture, because hardwood is always depressed in price, so it's just always going to be worth it. But for these other ones, you will generally want to rein it back in a little bit, unless they readjusted their adjustment. This is truly the question. Okay, split up shipyard, because they adjusted it, and in 1.5 now you definitely split them, and so maybe they readjusted their adjustment. Okay. Split up shipyards into two separate buildings that produce either civilian or military ships. Lowered farm output of grain from this to this. Okay. Lowered the amount of grain lost on potatoes and apple orchards from production methods from 20 to 15. Notably, the potatoes PM or rye farms now seem to be the second best farm after rice, which is interesting. For a variety of reasons, but they can produce liquor. But this makes food manufacturers suck. Food manufacturers definitely do not feel good in the way I was hoping that they were going to, based on some changes, but okay. Strengthen Sardinian Piedmont's starting economy. Agitators may now only participate in election once every 6 months. Reduce the health insurance mortality reduction. Mortality across the board is higher, so less pops, more performance. Gave technology military statistics a new purpose. Improves formation, organization, gain rate. Changed mud and lost battle conditions to having modifiers acting offense, defense, and morale instead of overhauled province capture. Reduced urbanization from heavy industry to cut down on excessive services and productions in industrialized states, except now you have reduced urbanization costs, so there should still overall be more services. Arts academies that were changed to have 5K workforce so as to not to differ so much from urban buildings. Passenger carriage PMs no longer reduce infrastructure when activated. Passenger carriages PMs for trains no longer reduce infrastructure when activated. Perfect. But I think now they increase transportation, but I believe they also increase the workforce instead of decreasing the workforce, so it's somewhat similar to the other thing. But you turn it on so that you can use the workforce PMs, and overall it doesn't really labor save as well as I think it should. But okay, this is a tangent. Ranching is now a fully separate building group from agriculture, just like plantations. Persians now starts with traditionalism rather than interventionism. Increased starting relations between Britain and Upper Lower Canada to avoid Britain immediately trying to annex them. Yikes. Peasant levies was increased from 2 to 4% conscription rate, but still with a maximum of 25 conscripted battalions per state, so it's most useful for countries with numerous but relatively sparsely populated states. Okay. Defend order now boosts defense a lot less, while advance order now boosts offense a little. Okay. This is also one of the reasons why you want to have an offensive army and a defensive army. Although it also depends how they adjust or switch, change, or balance troops borrowing, which was a bit of a problem throughout the beta because you could borrow your opponent's troops. I don't know if they fixed that. Added focused hardwood production method for logging camps. Logging camps overall got buffed in terms of their output, but a lot of it's so much in hardwood now, especially if you use the focused hardwood production, that there's just an absolute glut of hardwood. Hardwood will trend towards minus 75, which creates very strange things unless they've adjusted this since the 1.5.5 beta. Added experimental trains PM to railways. Railways overall kind of get nerfed. Balance Prussia's, France's, Great Britain's, USA starting buildings, production methods, and trade routes so that they aren't immediately unprofitable after state market access price impact changes. Or MAPI. A readjusted pop needs so that pops are less likely to buy basic goods when better goods are available. Interesting. I'm not sure if we've seen this, if this is a new change on top of 1.5.5 or if it's in 1.5.5. But as it stands currently, they really like grain and they really hate groceries, and it's really hard to get groceries up and going in terms of how it feels. Livestock ranches now produce meat as the base product. Fabric and fertilizer now in secondary PM. Cool. Public trams and motor carriages production for urban centers now produce transportation instead of consuming transportation, which is an interesting one. So far, it has not felt very good to turn these on, except in instances where you need transportation. It's kind of interesting that you can kind of smooth out your overall transportation situation by using automobiles, but automobiles as a PM still sucks unless they adjusted it from 1.5.5. Increased arable land in states with high unemployment and low standard of living. Increased arable land in states with high unemployment and low standard of living. I'm wondering if this is more arable land in Chinese states, but okay. Auto expand buildings now requires a building above 95% employment to expand. Allow me to reiterate. Auto expand building now requires employment above 95% to expand. Say it with your chest for everyone in back. Auto expand now requires above 95% to expand. So putting stuff on auto expand won't just result in this weird crazy there's like level 50 and it's like at 3% employment and you're just like you used to have to be careful with it, now you don't have to be as careful. All South American countries now start with empiricism technology. Elected bureaucrats, I think that I read somewhere else it's going to say that this applies to I think the private construction queue as well, which is also spectacular because really it was a problem. I think I saw someone on the Discord saying that this is going to apply to private queue, but really this makes electricity unbuildable in certain provinces because what it will do is it'll not be at employment, but it'll be profitable, so it'll auto expand and you'll just have like a level 80 electricity plant somewhere in 1.5.5, and it sounds like they've fixed this. A level 80 electricity plant with like 2% employment. Elected bureaucrats law now makes bureaucrats more inclined to join the petite bourgeoisie rather than boosting the raw PB political strength. Spectacular. Remove 2 explosives trade routes from history game setup that were trading 0 goods. Increased the number of states required to form Germany to 23, which means Prussia needs to either take a state from France or Austria in addition to various minor countries. Anchorages now produce only 20 convoys, down from 50. Korea now starts with sulfur deposits in Yanghu and Gwanbuk. The base rate of conversion and assimilation is now reduced by 90% in unincorporated states. Interesting, but again, assimilation is not a useful mechanic. Reduce the minimum minimum monthly, and also you should just go total separation because they are rolling back their migration changes, or that's what they said on the thing, but maybe they haven't. But I haven't seen anything about cultural communities, so I think they're rolling back their cultural community change and saving it for 1.6. Reduce minimum monthly rate of conversion assimilation from 2 to 1, so smaller pops don't convert at unreasonable rates. May still end up getting assimilated through pop consolidation game rule, though. Mass conscription rate was reduced from 4 to 3%. Base supplies mobilization option now enforces plus 25% consumption of military goods. Interesting. This might make the military-industrial complex run a little bit more on point. A lower rate of attrition is now applied when formations in their home HQ. Attrition is now always implied when armies are mobilized or fleets or when countries are at war. Now applies when they're in home HQ. Interesting. Rebalanced hardwood production methods for logging camps. I hope that they really balance this from 1.5.5 because currently there's just a massive glut of hardwood. Rebalanced small arms productions methods for arms industries. Steam engines are now unlocked by steel railway cars technology and have been renamed standard trains. This makes the steel railway cars technology significantly better and nerfs the initial railway kind of technology to be less of a rush if you don't actually need the infrastructure. Although with MAPI, that is the local prices considerations, you might still want it. It's a bit of a thing. Electric and diesel change now gives higher infrastructure with higher input costs. Lowered input goods of coal and engines for railways. This is, I think, what the change they have from all of 1.5. Generally speaking, railways have gotten nerfed. They lower the inputs and the outputs, lowered the amount of alcohol and subsistence buildings produce, increased rubber plantation potentials in South America, added dye potentials to South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. This is big nice for the U.S. Increased logging potential in Amazon's Congo and Siberia. Makes a lot of sense. Increased the amount of fabric livestock ranches could produce. Added recoil mechanics production to the artillery foundry, rebalanced artillery production methods for artillery foundry. Still gotta take a look at these, but like the secondary, it depends on how much they've changed on the hardwood. If hardwood still gets to minus 75%, it still might be best to use the second PM on artillery. But okay. Gave Greece a starting interest in Italy. Interest group trade modifiers have been lowered so that they're no longer potential or powerful or damaging. Increases aggression expansion from communists. Increased additional aggressive expansion against communist countries from 0.5 to 5? What? Increased AE from against communists from 0.5 to 5. I don't know what that means. Okay, whatever. Was there an AE difference against communist countries? And I just never noticed the modifier? Maybe there was. Okay. Switched Two Sicilies from interventionism to traditionalism. Yikes. Two Sicilies, huge nerf relative to Sardinia Piedmont, which I suppose makes sense. Whilst. Can we get a raise for whoever's writing this copy? Whilst slavery is still in effect, Dixie leaders will be more inclined to join the American Conservative Party, and likewise for the Yankees and Liberal Party. Anarchist flags now take priority over Council Republic ones. Poor pops in agricultural buildings can now be attracted to trade unions under commercialized or collectivized agriculture. That's a big change. Because before it used to be only rural folk, which would lead to like very big rural folk clout. Even when you're under, some things that maybe doesn't make the most sense. Also, perhaps we'll get to it, but commercialized agriculture or homesteading both allow increase PB attraction of a lot of the ownership class in the rural in the farms and stuff. This was in a different dev diary. It might be in this one. I don't know. The monarchy law now increases the political strength of aristocrats rather than providing a flat bonus to landowner clout, which is going to be nice because you can attract the aristocrats to being like military based, or you can attract them to other interest groups. So this will improve, bolster and suppress and this type of stuff. hereditary bureaucrats. I wanted to say heretical bureaucrats. I don't know why. Now increases aristocrats' political strength instead of landowners' political strength. The historical coal mining regions of Asturias now has coal potential, while Navarra had it be reduced. Spectacular. You actually needed coal at a certain level to activate the company, and you couldn't get it to that level. Streetlights now produce a small amount of infrastructure when enabled. Spectacular. Especially with the nerfing of railroads, this is going to be really nice because you don't have to build quite as many. Dongola and railroads also went, I think, from 600 or they went from like 450 to construction to 800, so they were one of the ones that got, instead of the 33% bump, they got the big bump in terms of construction costs. Construction costs across the board have been increased by 33 to 77%, depending on the building, if I recall correctly, which I haven't read yet in here, but okay. Dongola and Blue Nile have Nile River state trait. Puerto Rico now has the natural harbor state trait, nice. Readjusted Brazilian population figures in a couple of states. Mexico now has a starting claim on Central America's cheapas. Nursing events now will no longer fire in wars of less than 1,000 deaths. Gave Bavaria intensive agricultural technology at game start. Lowered the cost to build shipyards. Okay. Is this relatively speaking, or okay, whatever? Gave Montenegro a nudge to gain grain import trade route. American interest groups will be more inclined to form a two-party system unless they have ideologies outside the mainstream. This is actually an interesting change, but yeah, it will actually kind of be annoying. I think this is contingent upon you having presidential republic, though. So if you switch to parliamentary somehow, by going emperor and then back down, this will be the thing. Capitalist engineers and shopkeepers will be slightly more attracted to industrialists as their wealth increases. They got it all through their own merit. Limited pops can join intelligentsia, academics, aristocrats, bureaucrats, capitalists, clergymen, clerks, and engineers. Limited pops that can enjoin intelligentsia too. These guys. Overall, this change, they discussed it in another one, supposed to make the intelligentsia, a little bit bigger in the early game and later, smaller in the late game, such that overall it maintains like a small interest group level more consistently throughout. But I am noticing, if you recruit a bunch of generals when you have a revolution and there's only 2 or 3 interest groups around, you can really, really boost those interest groups a lot. Okay, the homesteading law now increases the political participation of farmers. Awesome. The increased political participation of pops and trade builders. By the way, this is, again, homesteading makes them more petit bourgeoisie oriented, so it's a lot easier to get petit bourgeoisie up and coming. Revisited Chilean arable land resources. All of South America got hugely buffed, especially by the reduction of, state construction malices, basically. Reduce the penalty for Greece restoring the Olympics. I don't even remember this event. Subsistence buildings under collectivized agriculture now employ fewer clergymen. That makes sense. Appointed bureaucrats now increase bureaucrats. Although we'll have to remember collectivized agriculture, not homesteading. Okay. Appointed bureaucrats now increases bureaucrat political strength rather than raw intelligentsia political strength. Perfect. The crop failure event is now better tied to agricultural productivity. Added silk potential to Moldova. Removed Sahara penalties from Dongola. Big nice. Removed the amount of infrastructure from streetlights production methods by 50%. Reduced. Okay, so this is probably relative to 1.5.5. That is a pretty big reduction. Okay, fair enough, though. Remove the consumption of small arms from irregular infantry. Added farm to Puritini, however you pronounce it, in Isaac. The homesteading and commercialized agricultural laws now permit middle strata rural pops to become petit bourgeoisie. This is kind of the big one. We were mentioning petit bourgeoisie is a lot easier to empower in various ways. They increased farmer weight and granted them middle strata status. The homesteading increased farmer weight and granted them middle strata status. Does this, I wonder if this increases their base wage multiplier. I assume no, but that'd be interesting. The homesteading law now grants increased political power for farmers rather than rural folk and interest groups. Engineers now have a slightly higher preference for the PB. Made soldiers more likely to support the armed forces if the wages are high and vice versa if low. Non-discriminated pops in unincorporated states are more likely to support the armed forces. I think there's another thing where this effect is more pronounced if you're on a particular law. The professional law army now increases soldiers' pop attraction to armed forces and decreases non-military pop attraction. Okay. Peasant levies, this is the one, that increases in unincorporated states. Peasant levies law now increases aristocrats' pop attraction to armed forces. Now remember, a bunch of these laws now empower aristocrats rather than empowering necessarily they empower aristocrats rather than landowners. And so if the peasant levies now increase their attraction to armed forces, it might be a way to get out from underneath the landowners just staying on peasant levies for longer. I'm not sure exactly how this plays out, but we'll see. Or actually, this'll... I mean, if it instead just increases aristocrat pop attraction to armed forces instead of increasing their clout, then this would absolutely help to kneecap the landowners relative to the armed forces. Officers are now slightly more attracted to armed forces. Clergymen are now slightly more attracted to devout. State religion, religious schools, and freedom conscious now increase pop attraction to the devout, which makes the devout much easier to maintain above 20% clout throughout the game if you wanted to do a religious run. Okay, capitalists are now slightly more attracted to the industrialists. Academics and bureaucrats are now slightly more attracted to the intelligentsia. Clerks are now slightly less attracted to intelligentsia. Pardon me. Aristocrats are now slightly less attracted to intelligentsia by default, with hereditary bureaucrats slightly increasing their attraction. Big nice. Increased intelligentsia for aristocrats, capitalists, clergymen, pops, and urban centers, government administrations, universities, and arts academies. Okay. Farmers will be more attracted to the landowners as their wealth increases. Gotta keep them poor then. Decrease of the base attraction of non-urban pops to the petite bourgeoisie. Shopkeepers are now slightly more attracted to the petite bourgeoisie. Clerks are slightly more attracted to the petite bourgeoisie. Decrease the middle strata's pops attraction to the trade unions. Interesting. So, before you used to get a lot of their clout from, their engineers, and so it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Okay. Overall, playing on 1.5.5, the petite bourgeoisie and the religious devout are much more present in the game, especially if you have laws that support the devout, although the devout still fall off. And then the trade unionists have seemed a lot more sticky, but okay. Papal landowners and devout now both support theocracy. Big nice. Columbia District now starts with the frontier colonization law, which will allow them to actually colonize that thing. Bureaucrats, clerks, and engineers now have higher base education access. Yeah, the Columbia District also always has that little gap in terms of the colonization that's super annoying to stare at the map. So I'm guessing they colonize that now. Bureaucrats, clerks, and engineers now have a higher base education access. Bureaucrats, clerks, and engineers now have a higher base education access. Interesting. Reduce the throughput modifier for the Hell on Earth event. It's sad. Slave states will now increase farmers' attraction to landowners and decrease their attraction to the petite bourgeoisie. Makes sense. Okay, so that is the section. Oh yeah, my throat's starting to hurt. On balance. Let's get into art. Or actually, let's skip the art. They added a bunch of art, new splashes and stuff. We're going to skip the art. In fact, that might have been the last section. We are going to read interface. Oh, no, wait. We're going to skip interface. We're going to skip modding. And then we're going to read through, and we're going to skip bug fixes, and then that's going to be it. So we are going to read through interface and content, and then the one last thing. Okay. So interface. Improved flag... Actually, the interface is the most visually seeable thing. I think we're going to skip this, because I don't think people would... I think as far as me reading through stuff and giving my thoughts on this is going to be just me saying, wow, that's nice. Wow, that's nice. Wow, that's nice. So let's talk about content. So here is the content section right here. Added the established colonial administration journal entry, which allows you to set up and expand custom colonial nations in Africa. Currently, there's really not much incentive to actually utilize this because it'd be better for you just to own the land. Reworked the exploiting the Amazon journal entry and added 8 new events associated with it. This allows you to change the state bonuses, which is really cool. Swapped unique approval activated traits for interest groups in several countries. Created outfits for Russian military leaders. Nice. You can get Ivan Minin. Added a decision to Korea to declare the Korean Empire. Ooh, that's cool. I don't remember seeing that. Added events, journal entries, and decisions centered around Romanian unification. They typically, in 1.5.5 and the beta, they typically do unify. Added country formation events that trigger upon forming a country. Typically, they add claims and unclaimed homeland states. Added a journal entry for Polish-Lithuania to be expanded into Ruthenia. Added several other new state traits to the Brazil and the rest of South America. Made it more historical characters have been added to all South American nations. Added a colony exchange button to the exchange for button to the Scramble for Africa journal entry to exchange colonies with another country, reducing border gore. Added the Nation of Turtle Island journal for the indigenous countries in North America. Reworked the Peru-Bolivian Confederation content. Added content for Argentina and Chile, reacting to it. Reworked the Path to Socialism journal entry and the Spectre haunting the world into the Spectre haunting the world. Added several American interest groups tied to the new company's mechanic. Interest group leaders tied to the new company's mechanic. Is this like Ford? My nose itches. Okay, a new journal entry. Added a new journal entry to France to expand the Confederation of the Rhine as a puppet state. Currently, it seems that it might be meta to form the Confederation of the Rhine as a subject and then vassal feed them, which is something you can do. Added a journal entry and associated events dealing with Polish unification. Playing as Krakow should be much more viable. Added Bahia as a releasable country. Added a new flag for the Joseon dynasty, which I believe is Korea. Added a new journal entry for Central American reunification. Completion allows a less awkward restoration of the UCA tag. Okay. Added a journal entry for Brazilian miners to win their independence wars. Added a victory event for the CSA Slavery USA that allows you to reintroduce the slave trade following American Civil War. Oh no, not like this. Japanese characters and pops will now transition to more European fashions after the Meiji Restoration is completed. Big nice. Added numerous historical monarchs for Russia with their... We add them so we can subtract them, right? 1882, never forget. With events with the Association for the Throne and the deaths of the heirs, reworked Italian unification, added a journal entry to Japan to represent the nation's historically high literacy rate, added enlightened royalist ideology, which is a fusion between royalist and humanitarian. What? This is a gem that's just buried in there. What the hell? Okay, what? By the way, the reworked Italian unification has a very significant bug that allows you to form the HRE and then get the HRE annex, which is hilarious. But what? Added enlightened royalist ideology, which is a fusion between royalist and humanitarian. Does this mean... We're going to screenshot this. Does this mean... I can't believe I missed this the first time reading through, but this is an interesting one. Huh. Okay, well, this might be another, avenue of getting humanitarian. There's a unique ideology for, what is it, it's like Paraguay or Uruguay, I forget which Uruguay it is, but, it's like an insane-looking one that looks, really strong, but it's unique to them. Indonesia and Turkestan now require fewer states to form. Los Altos also now gains independence and if and when Central America dissolves. Okay. Added a new corporatism tech and ideology. No, not like this. That served to strengthen and modify the devout in the mid-game. This is not present in 1.5.5. This is interesting, but I think that the tech should not be called corporatism. Okay. Added a button to the Conquest of the Desert journal entry to enable faster colonization. Renamed Egypt's rural folk to interest group to Felahin. I don't know if I pronounced that correct. We have performance, which we're going to read just because it's so short. Right here. Building meshes in cities will now add square root of the previous mesh level per linear progression to improve late game performance in the looks of cities to make them more distinct on the map. Okay. Improve performance of buildings' earnings, employment cases, filtering out government subsidized buildings that always want to hire, and removing unnecessary goods substitution impact predictions. Okay. Improve performance while running the game with the C region panel opened. Optimize the list of trade routes in the market panel and trade route tab. Buildings that want to hire more employees but do not succeed will now wait 4 weeks instead of trying again. If a building is hiring a cooldown raises his wages, it will reset the cooldown. This importantly does, I think, make qualifications more important, because buildings that don't have enough qualifications will now hire slower, I think, if I recall, or this is the feeling I get from my gameplay, but 1.5.5, but this might have been adjusted, once live hits. Improved performance updates to input good shortages by excluding states that have no shortages from running the update logic. Fixed bug where conscription VFX could over cities can spawn indefinitely. Okay, I don't know what that means. We have a section for modding. If you are a modder and you're interested in this, I assume you're just going to read the changelog yourself, so we're not going to go through this, right? And also, this added military _ formation scriptlets, this doesn't mean a whole lot to me, so as someone who doesn't mod, so I can't give comments on it. And bug fixes, we are not going to read through all the bug fixes. I believe there's somewhere in here where it talks about private queue not overbuilding in places that don't have full employment, but a lot of these are just like, not necessarily the stuff that's most readable. This is something that if you're super interested in, you can go over and read yourself. And that's all, folks. Victorians. Phew. Yeah, phew is right. We're over an hour and a half into this. We will see you next week after launch with a smaller dev diary, I hope so, about what you can expect from us in the near future and beyond. Up until then, we hope you'll enjoy us celebrating 20 years of Victoria with the anniversary update. Big nice, big happy, and I hope you guys enjoyed the sweet nothings in my voice for the last hour and a half. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't, I have no idea why you're here this long, but, shout out to you. By the way, if you ever dislike anyone's content on YouTube, what you can do is, in the suggestions, when it gets suggested to you, there's like a little triple dot thing. You can click triple dot and don't show stuff from this user if you wanted to curate your stuff. And other than that, everyone have a good day. And I'll see you all on the 14th.